Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the next set of chapters of Magician's Gambit from the Belgariad series, chapters 16 through 21. So hopefully you are enjoying the third book here. We are pretty close to being done. I believe the next class that we have on it will be the last one before we can move on to book 4. So a lot of fun things to talk about this time. But let's first go ahead and go over the trivia question as always. Thank you to everyone who participated in the trivia this week, and we had 2 correct answers. The answer was the man with the 2 lives. It was actually a question related to the Belgariad series. So congratulations to Christian, up to my bloody eyes and a lorns, and Paul for having the correct answer. And thank you for everyone who participated and gave it their best guess. If you would like to and also join into the trivia question, it changes every single week, and you are welcome to check it out on the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. It'll be on the right hand side on desktop. You'll just have to scroll down just a tiny little bit to see the question. Or you're welcome on mobile to scroll almost all the way down and you will see it there. So if you'd like to join and play with us, that would be super fun to have you join us as well, and you can find the question there. Okay, let's go ahead and start with our recap as always. Okay, so the group meets the Ulgo Gorem deep in the Ulgo cave. So they have arrived at the Ulgo community, and they enter and meet with the Gorem. And Belgariad says to him that he is going to be taking one of their priests or one of their people who is going to come with them. His name is Relg. And the Gorem is suspicious. He doesn't believe that he'll be able to get him to come with them. So Relg is called, and at first that is correct. He completely refuses to go with them. It tells them that they're nuts and that he will never step outside of the caves. Until Ul himself appears, and he grovels before him. And Ul tells him, you are going to go with them and you're going to do what they need you to do, and there is going to be no discussion about it. And he also then tells Sinedra that she is going to need to stay in the caves while they go to Kothomurgos and retrieve the orb. So she's supposed to stay, Relg is supposed to go, and then the group will come back after they retrieve the orb and pick up Sinedra. So the group, sans Sinedra, heads out and starts by going through the caves as far as they can towards their destination. And then when they are getting closer to Kothomurgos, they actually end up finding out that Tor Urgas, who is the ruler and leader of Kothomurgos, is killing merchants and trying to discourage them from doing business in the city. And he's completely trying to push out all of the merchants, trying to make it so that way none of them will come and do business there. He wants to completely block off the trade. But they still continue heading in that direction, obviously, and they stop at the halfway point, which is just a little place set up, and they end up running into Silk's old acquaintance, Yarblik. So they're talking to Yarblik shortly, and Yarblik tells him that Tor Urgas is on his way to the halfway point and will be there any moment. So Silk dashes away right before he shows up, and the group sneaks out of Yarblik's tent and is in hiding when they find that Brill is there, and he has captured Silk and has brought him as a gift to Tor Urgas. So that's where we end. It's at a pretty intense moment. Silk has been captured and he's not looking too good, and hopefully that they can save him, and but we'll see what happens. It is in a tough spot right now, and they can't just leave because Silk has been captured. Okay, so I felt like there was a lot that was kind of going on in these chapters, but all were kind of related to a similar topic. And in this particular set of chapters specifically, I feel like religion is a very big part of all of the interactions that we have in this section. So obviously the Ulgo is the biggest portion of that, because we have Relg and the Ulgo people who are very, very religious people. And so we spend many chapters with them, getting to know a little bit about their society, getting a little bit to know about their relationship with Ul. The Gorum talks a bit about, their society, and in the caves we see from Relg's perspective, we even get to meet Ul. So there's a lot to do with Ulgo and their religion. And especially because it's at the very forefront of their culture and society, everyone is very, very religious in this society. Their people really, really love their god and spend a lot of their time practicing that religion and giving thanks to Ul for everything that he has done for them, especially since in their past they had to work so hard in order to even have a god that would look after them and protect them and who wanted them. So they sing in the caves that they have every single hour in order to keep the song that they sing to Ul alive throughout the cave, reverberating off the stones, reverberating throughout the different chambers. So constantly you are hearing this song being sung throughout the entire area that they live. It's just ringing and ringing. Some of the caves will ring for hours and hours before it fades. So every time that they sing and renew it, it just keeps it lasting longer and longer. And no matter where you go, you can, even if it's just a little bit of a slight murmuring of it, you can still hear it bouncing off the walls and filling the whole space with the song and the praise to Ul. And then we also have Gorum, who is their leader, and is the head of the religion as well as head of the community. So he is the one that will relay Ul's will and will direct the society based on how Ul wants things to go and what he wants the society to be doing. So he's kind of the go-between for Ul and the rest of the Ulgo people. Of course, this doesn't mean that Ul never speaks to anybody else. Obviously, he did speak to Relg, and the fact that he mentioned that the new Gorum was going to be coming to the society through him. But basically, the Gorum is the one that he trusts, or Ul trusts, and chooses to lead the people in the path that he believes will be best for them. And he will communicate directly with the Gorum and help him lead the rest of the people. So the Gorum has a lot of weight and a lot of power in this society because of his connection to Ul and how he works with Ul to help direct the society. He, in this particular moment, has had Relg trying to undermine his authority, thinking that he is going to be leading them to the next Gorum, which makes him a little bit of a higher person. However, the Gorum still keeps his power even after Relg has kind of undermined him a bit. Completely still able to speak in a manner that everyone will follow, that people are scared of to defy because they don't want to defy Ul. And they know that Ul has given Gorum the power to be the leader. So, very hard to usurp any point in the Gorum because they know that he is truly the leader that Ul wants to have leading them. So yes, very big community, not a huge community, but like very big religious following in this community since everybody is part of the religious following. Of course, they do have their particular group that is even more so in charge of the religious factions and more people who do more of the everyday stuff, but everybody in this community is very, very religious, is very much a follower of Ul. And this is the first society that we've really seen that is quite so heavily oriented around the religion of their god. So the different communities we have might have their gods and they might have connections to them, as we've seen, but this is the first one that really orients their entire society base, their entire culture is focused on first dedicating to their god, and then the rest is to whatever needs to be done for their survival and for their actual living. So very interesting society, especially since they are so isolated from everybody else in the world. Then on the opposite side of the religious spectrum that we see in this set of chapters is when they're getting closer to Cothal Murgos and they see the reaction to the religious ceremonies of the Thulls. It's quite an opposite type of religion in the fact that the Grolams will do human sacrifices to Torak. They do 2,000 human sacrifices a year. So Thulls are not very happy with their religion, and in quite contrast to the Ulgo society, they would much rather not have religious practices and not comply with those religious practices, and would much rather not be religious people. Instead of themselves being sacrificed, if they own a slave, they can give the slave to the people in order to have that as the sacrifice instead. So Thulls will forever be trying to buy a slave and to have a slave in case they are chosen to be the one sacrificed that year, and then they will have that particular loophole in order to give somebody else to die instead of themselves. So Thulls work completely for religious reasons, but it's not to do the religious practice, it is to work in order to not be the one sacrificed for the religious practice. They do everything they can to try and get out of their religious quote duty according to the Grolams. Women in this society are also working their whole life to try and not be sacrificed to Torak by keeping themselves pregnant, because that is the loophole for women. Is if they are pregnant, it counts as, two people technically, or kind of two people. It's not really a one-person deal in order for the Grolams to count their numbers of how many they've sacrificed. So they will not sacrifice pregnant women. So women will always try to be pregnant in order to get out of this religious ceremony. If they're always pregnant, they can't be sacrificed, and so are very much interested in trying to be with men, any men, doesn't matter who, as long as they don't have, as long as they are pregnant and can keep having children, because they do not want to die on the altar of Torak. So again, both men and women have their ways of getting out of things, and they work their entire life to try and make it so that way they are able to use that loophole and not be sacrificed to Torak. So really, we've got two very opposite cultures, because the Ulgo loves their god, the Ulgo praises their god, and that's why their religious community is so much the way it is because they base their society around their love of their god, and that their god has given them such prosperity and such good care. The full society and religion of being run by the Grolams are not so happy with Torak. They're not so heavily religious. Really, they're trying to get out of every single religious practice that they can. They don't really want to be involved with Torak. They don't want to be sacrificed to Torak. It is not considered an honor to be sacrificed to the god. In fact, they would much rather not have to deal with that at all, and are willing to sacrifice another human being for themselves, or to have plenty of kids and always being pregnant in order to not be able to go through with having to be sacrificed to Torak. So a really benevolent god, a very horrible god, a very religious-based society because they like their god and they praise their god, and a society that really does not like their god except for the Grolams, who are the only really religious people here, and who also never get sacrificed, so why wouldn't they love their religion? But really the main people who are supposed to be under this god do not like it, do not want to have to deal with it, would rather try running off a cliff and see if they survive instead of being sacrificed to their god. So very, very different ideas, very, very different views of religion and what is good and what is bad in terms of what a god should ask for. So, and how people view religion. The Thulls do not think very highly of it, and the Ulgos think very highly of religion. So, two very opposing views next to each other in this same set of chapters. So it's very, very interesting to see how one man's treasure and one man's life is really the death sentence for another man's life. Now let's go ahead and talk about Relg for a little bit. He is definitely a more interesting character, or a little bit more of an extreme, in-your-face kind of character than some of the other characters that we've had in this story. Definitely somebody who stands out, definitely somebody who is a very intense person, I would say, and is the most religious person that we have encountered in this series, at least as far as I think about. I can't think of anybody else who is more religious than Relg is. So I think that he'll be a very interesting person to talk about. We don't need a whole lot of time with him to kind of get the gist of who he is, at least at this moment. I really feel like now that he's adventuring and seeing more of the world, he will probably change by the time he gets back to the Ulgo Caves, and I think maybe that is the reason he was chosen for this little quest here. But he's definitely a very interesting character. He is very, very, very intense about religion and believes that religion equals life. And that really, that's all your life should be spent on, is being religious. He even continued to try and be firm about his notion of religion is most important no matter what the god asks of you, even when he was, confronted with the horrificness of the Thull religion and being sacrificed, and how people fought against that religion and how terrible that kind of society must be. He still was like, well, it's their duty to be religious and to do what their god asks of them. So even though he kind of was pulling back and like second guessing himself, like that's not something Ul would ever ask me to do, kind of thing, and that doesn't seem like something right for a god to ask, but he did still stand by his ground and be like, no, they should try and be honorable to their religion and do what their god asks. So you can tell that at least this exact moment he's very, very stuck in his religion trumps everything mindset. And he doesn't talk about anything but religion at this point. All his thoughts are related to religion, and the fact that he believes himself to be very dirty and very sinful, doesn't believe that he really is pure at all, even though at the beginning when we first meet him he has all that kind of pride, like, oh, Ul picked me like to show the next Gorum I'm all that, I'm gonna lead everybody else because I must be better than the Gorum now. He had that pride and that self-assurance of himself, but really he constantly feels like he is failing, that he is not up to par and where he should be in order to truly be Ul's disciple and to be Ul's child. So he believes that he is wrong for lusting for women. Apparently he is a very sexually denied person, and that he believes all sex with women or wanting to have sex with women is a sin, that you shouldn't lust after a woman, that you shouldn't really want that. Though I think that that's very interesting because he does make the point, or does agree with the point that Garam points out to him about, well, without sex and marriage that there would be no children, and which means there would be no new Gorum, and he does find that conflicting. But he personally himself is like, nope, no lusting after women. He believes that speaking your own will and implying that will is Ul's to be super, super bad. He realizes after this moment of Ul chastising him and saying, hey, you're really blowing what I said out of the proportion. You're now making yourself higher than I ever said that you were. he realizes that he really was doing what he believes is right, and saying Ul told him that was correct, and how sinful and bad that is, that he was then speaking for his God and making things the way that he wanted them to be, not necessarily the way Ul really wanted them to be. And he believes that he is very greedy for wanting to have that power over others, to enjoy that power, to want to control how people think and what people do, and wanting to make their choices for them. So he does have these things that he himself acknowledges, which I do actually think is actually a pretty cool and good point, is that he does acknowledge that he is like that. He does recognize that, and believes that then he is sinful because he has these qualities. I don't know enough about him at this point. We don't know to see exactly how long he has been doing this. It does sound like it's been for a little while, but he definitely has had this wake-up call and feels like he is very unworthy and very sinful and dirty compared to how he should be in order to be a perfect person for Ul. He's wholly devoted to Ul, 100%, and his religious piety. The outside world, he believes, is going to make him unclean. He wants to be wrapped up 100% in Ul, which that is the caves. So anything outside, he believes, might make him unfit and unworthy of Ul. Touching anybody or having anybody touch him will make him unclean and dirty and not good enough for Ul. He does those hourly devotionals where he stops and prays and gives his thanks to Ul and stops the whole trip to be able to make these prayers, because he doesn't want to, for one moment, have anything not dedicated to Ul. And he feels desperate to be forgiven for what he believes are the sins that he is doing, which we just covered, as well as how he has acted in his greed for power. So all of his thoughts are that he is sinful and dirty. All of his motivations are to be wholly dedicated to Ul, to give his life for Ul, and to make sure that he is 100% wrapped up in Ul, and that is the whole dedication of his life. So it's very, very interesting to see that this is a character that can't even comprehend life without the definition of it being wrapped around or being lived for Ul. Someone who is very much, religion is everything to him, and Ul is everything to him. Relg, on the other hand, because of his such dedication, such dedicated lifestyle to Ul, also has the more closed-mindedness about women, and the fact that he is pretty sexist towards women and believes that they are only there in order to corrupt men. And because their main function in society is to corrupt men, he is also someone who could be corrupted, and it is testing his faith, and that's why he is so upset about women and wishing that he could tell his men not to be able to be married and to not have sex with women. He has made that personal choice, it seems, to not be with women and to not have sex or to be with them. So I'm not totally sure why he finds it then sinful that, having relationships with women, and for him lusting after women, says it isn't forbidden, but in his mind that takes away from the sanctity that he has with Ul. So again, it's definitely very interesting to know that why Ul would choose this particular person in order to go on the journey with him, other than that he has such that unique skill of being able to move through the caves and to find those caves, and that is why they need him. But I also wonder if, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, if the reason that he has been chosen is because in order for him to be the person that Ul needs him to be, he must go through this experience in order to maybe, I don't know if he'll mellow out or not, but maybe to change and to see more about the world, and then we'll be able to become the person that he needs him to be. So, and I also want to talk a little bit about, now that we've kind of discussed who he is as a person, a little bit about how he relates to other people and how other people relate to him and react to him and his viewpoints and his personality. The first one that comes to mind is how Brock interacts with Relg. Brock is actually pretty intolerant when it comes to Relg. He does not understand him. He does not get his personality. He does not get his beliefs. He does not get why he thinks the way he does. And so Brock and him very much clash. Brock is pretty intolerant of his beliefs, of his reactions, because he does not understand it. So Brock is constantly being affronted and constantly being angry because Relg is acting the way that he is. Or when Brock finally understands, like, oh, okay, this is what I did, and he tries to like apologize or fix or to interact with him, he completely negates it, doesn't want any consolation, doesn't want him to be understanding. And so they just don't mesh at all, and Brock just has a hard time putting himself in Relg's shoes, which makes it hard for him to travel with him and to be understanding with him. So we definitely see these two butting heads, these two completely opposite ends of people, and they cannot relate to each other at all, and it very much makes friction between the two. So we've got that friction going on now with the company because Brock is constantly being upset with Relg, and Pol and Belgariad, they're constantly trying to say, Brock, knock it off. And so instead of Relg, knock it off, or anything like that. So it is causing some problems between Brock and Relg, and then it's causing problems a little bit within the group. On the other hand, though, Relg really connects with Garon because Uhl talked to Garon and treated Garon like he was somebody important and special. So really the only reason that Relg connects to Garon is because of Uhl, but I mean that is kind of what's needed for Uhl to connect to anybody. Or to Relg to connect to anybody, is to have Uhl's favor or to have Uhl's recognition. And since Garon's really the only person that got that, even in compared to, Belgariad or Polgara, Garon specifically got recognition and was spoken to by Uhl. So he really has kind of a connection. I'm trying to I don't know if it's really a connection or more if it's like someone he just feels that he can just chat to because Uhl gave him permission in a way to chat to Garon, but he does open up to Garon. Though Garon is not very happy about that, considering that he's stuck babysitting someone he really finds frustrating a little bit, not in the fact of how Brock finds him frustrating, but more that he just finds him extreme, and Garon can't do extreme for forever, which no one can blame him. But Garon is actually very, very patient with Relg. I actually was very proud of Garon in this moment, where Relg is talking to him, who he's using him as a secondary Uhl, someone who's if you are forgiven by Garon, that means you're forgiven from Uhl kind of mentality that he had going on in that moment. Talked to him, wanted forgiveness from him, wanted to be spared his sins, to feel like he was a clean person. And Garon was the way that he was going to try and get that. And Garon actually was very, very patient with him, trying to explain to him the outside world, trying to explain to him why he shouldn't be scared of the sky. And so when this happens, he truly understands the deepness of his love of Relg's love for Uhl, for his deepness of his religiousness, the deepness of how much that means to him, and how much it would mean to be forgiven. And so Garon then says, I cannot do that for you. because he knows that giving it falsely would be a horrible misjustice to Relg, which I find was super, super good, super important, amazing of Garon to do. That's something that's very important to Relg, and he could not provide that as a fake nicety. So I was very, very impressed with how Garon in general has been handling Relg. Just with that moment, by saying, hey, I cannot give that to you, I'm not going to give it to you as a lie, by him explaining everything, being very patient, understanding that Relg had no idea of the outside world, had never had any contact with it, and was afraid of it, just as Garon was afraid to be closed in his caves. How he's patient with him when he talks about all the sinning that he does. He brings up points, but he doesn't argue with him or tell him that he's wrong or tell him that he should think differently. He just engages with the conversation where he needs to engage and kind of lets Relg chat on about himself. So he really is, though he wasn't very happy to be stuck with him, he isn't overly mad about it either. It's not like he keeps making a pain of it or telling Relg to just shut up or doing any of that. He's very, very patient with him, actually, and I feel like that also is helping Relg connect to him, because he has somebody who's actually taking time for him and being patient with him and trying to connect with him and trying to listen to him and what's important to him, even if Relg is not mature enough to do that back to Garon and try and be a mutually understanding person. But he does really connect and appreciate the fact that Garon is trying for him and is taking that patience that he needs in order to try and move past all he's known and all his mindsets that he normally has. I'm actually pretty upset that Belgariad and Polgara acted the way they did toward Garon when he was very mature about saying that he couldn't grant Relg the forgiveness that he wanted. I would have thought that Belgariad would have been more understanding, and Aunt Pol would have been more understanding and more proud of the maturity that it took for Garon to say no, especially when he knew how important this forgiveness was for Relg. You would think that that would be something that they would take into account and that would matter. At least I would think that that would be something that Garon would have applauded versus chastised. But Belgariad actually has a very interesting connection with Relg at this point, in the fact that this is the first person I've seen Belgariad really treat as more of a tool than a person. Everyone else so far matters to Belgariad. Everyone is an important character, or an important person in relationship to him, like a companion, that kind of stuff. But here he really just sees Relg as a means to an end. He really just sees what Relg is doing for him and why he needs him, and that is why he wants to keep him happy. It is not because he truly cares about Relg or wants to, help him become a better person, or, in the scheme of things, like, he needs something, but he actually cares about him as well. At this point, he's like, just do whatever it takes in order to get him to come with us, for him in order to do what needs to be done and for us to get going on our mission. He truly sees him as kind of a means to an end more than a person itself, and I find that very interesting, that he is quite so black and white with Relg, and he's quite so tolerant with him only because he wants to make sure that he sticks with them and that he does the job that is needed. And I do understand that Relg is important to this mission and that Relg is important for their success, but Belgariad is usually much more about people as well. Yes, he is the big picture person, especially compared to Aunt Pol, but he also is somebody that really connects to people, really compassionate, really understanding. So I think it's very harsh that Belgariad chooses not to connect with Relg because he cares more about what Relg is supposed to do and just trying to get him to function the way he wants him to function, instead of connecting with him on a more human level. So let me know what you thought about that. Did that kind of rub you the wrong way, or did that seem out of character for Belgariad, for him to be so heartless in a way and just tell Garon, like, oh, you should have just told him what he wanted to hear? instead of really connecting on what that would have done to Relg. Possibly would have hurt him more in the end. You never know. Maybe that would not have been the best move later down the road when they want him to do things either. Alright, so that wraps up this section of Magician's Gambit. We're close to getting done. Please let me know what you felt like Belgariad in that moment, whether you thought that was harsh or not, and your thoughts. And let me know about anything else. We had a lot of interesting kind of developments here, a lot of new perspectives of this world that we have not seen before. I do have 2 nitty gritty really quick. The first one is I am wondering what Silk could possibly have done to Tar Urgas that nobody seems to know about that would make him such a valuable gift for Brill to bring to him, and for him to find that such a great thing for Brill to bring him and make it so he's kind of excused for him talking to him even, or like the whole high-handedness that he had with Brill until he brought Silk out, and then he was very happy. So I wonder what could have possibly happened to have gotten him in this bad of the books for Tar Urgas. And the second is that we keep talking about how this child that's going to be the new Gorham is going to come through Relg to the Ugos. Now, we do have a child who is holding the orb for, I believe now he's with Kustik. I believe that's how you say his name. Not Zeter anymore, his companion or whatever, his co-conspirator, whatever. And he's the one that is the innocent one that's holding the orb because they cannot take it themselves. So possibly with them saving this orb, they would also be saving this child, and maybe this child has going to come with Relg back to the Ugo, and maybe this child is going to be the new Gorham. That's just a thought that crossed my mind, that possibly could be the case. It could also possibly not, but we did have quite a few mentions of a child being passed through Relg, and now Relg is on his way towards a child. So we will see if that is the case. Let me know if you guys thought about that or what you think of that theory down below. Would love to hear your thoughts and feelings about this or about anything else that we've discussed, or anything else in the books that we've talked about so far. Yeah, so I guess that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me and discussing this next set. I believe the next class we will be finishing up the Magician's Gambit and moving forward with our next book. So we'll have to go ahead and transition from this one to, I believe it's called The Castle of Wizardry is the next one. So let's go ahead and finish this up. You can find me on Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. You can also find me on Twitter, which is @fantasyfiction1. You can comment down below if you'd like to get a hold of me, or you're also welcome to find me on the Discord. We've got quite a few people over there chatting and having a great time discussing fiction, fantasy, talking about all kinds of things, not even fantasy related, just chatting and getting to know each other and discussing good things. So hopefully, if that sounds like fun to you to talk to your fellow fantasy fiction fanatics, the link for it is down below, and we would love to see you there and to chat with you. So hopefully you will go ahead and join us. And I'm on there as well, so if you need to get a hold of me, I will be there as well. You can also contact me through email, which is always listed down below. Sorry, my light just went out, so I guess we're going to have to do the rest of this last little outro with the half light. Sorry about that. Anyway, you can also find more content from me on my blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. Anything else that you want, like book reviews, book suggestions, I've got fanatic deliberations over there. Lots of different things. I'm talking about a whole bunch of stuff about fantasy over there if you want more content from me. And there's also a contact form and a newsletter over there if you'd like to sign up for those or to get a hold of me. And I think that's about it. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.